Welcome, everyone. So pleased you could join us tonight. I'm Robin Stafford with the Office of Engagement, working with UVA clubs. And I'm pleased tonight to introduce alumnus Pat Powell. Hi, Pat.
Hi there. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Pat kindly agreed to open his house and share his collections with the UVA community. I visited Pat in Petersburg, Virginia, and filmed him at home and at Battersea, which is a historic house that he is helping to restore. We will learn a lot more about Pat's background tonight. First, we're going to watch a video, and that is about 15 minutes long, and then we will see you back here for Q&A. And Ashley, you can go ahead and roll the video. Thanks so much.
Welcome. Please come in. Good to have you in Petersburg, Virginia. My name is Pat Powell. I'm a native of Charlottesville, Virginia, but in retirement I relocated to Petersburg. I'm class of 1970 in plastics at UVA, 1972 graduate arts and sciences at UVA. And I actually taught for one trimester after I got out of graduate school, and it was a substitute teaching job. If they kept me on, I'd still be there, but the lady had to have a baby, and so I had an experience teaching. While in Charlottesville, I was general manager of wholesale distributorship, and later became an auctioneer. And perhaps some of you have actually been to some of my auctions, Harlowe-Powell Auction. I was co-founder of that auction firm. So welcome to my home here in Petersburg. And I'll start off with a little story that relates to UVA and to my collecting obsession. This brass Buddha that welcomes everyone has an interesting story. It's one of my first collectibles. In 1966, when I was first year at university, I tried to sign up for an elective world religion that was taught by Professor Vernon McCaslin. Well, as a first year student, I was not very high up on the list of people who could take that course as an elective. So I didn't get in. But Vernon McCaslin passed away, unfortunately, in the early 1970s, and there was an estate sale at his house. And so instead of taking his course on world religion, I purchased his brass Buddha. So this is the brass Buddha that belonged to Professor Vernon McCaslin, who taught religion at the University of Virginia. My collecting obsession spans the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. That means I'm eclectic. I'll start with this piece that's in my entry hall, and this is a late 18th century Virginia wine cellaret. Wine was valuable. You had a key to lock it in place. Moving around, we have an 18th century English Georgian gentleman's chest. We have a late 18th century Massachusetts lowboy. And one of my favorite pieces of furniture is this late 18th, early 19th century Connecticut River Valley chest of drawers. This has an interesting history. In 1907, there was the Jamestown Exposition, and the various first states of the United States each had a house, and the Connecticut house decorated everything with furniture from the beginning of the United States period. This particular chest of drawers was on display at the Jamestown Exposition, and there is a label inside the top drawer with an inventory number stating that it was on display at the Connecticut house at the Jamestown Exposition. This is my collection of 19th century English Staffordshire. which about 20 years ago was worth a lot of money. It's decreased in value, but I still love it. And anyone who wants to start collecting, they can pick pieces up at a reasonable price. My favorite piece is General Washington. If you look closely, it's not General Washington, it's Benjamin Franklin. But those English guys across the pond didn't necessarily know the difference between Benjamin Franklin and General Washington. And so this was mislabeled, which makes it a lot more valuable than the figures that are labeled Benjamin Franklin. Here's a little story about a crazy collector, yours truly. This piece down here is Japanese wireless cloisonné. It dates to the 19th century, and it's something I had wanted for a long time, something of that quality. And it just so happened that there was an auction sale in Fredericksburg, Virginia. My partner in the little antique shop that we own together and I were both at the auction sale. This piece came up. I bought it and I started screaming in the middle of the auction. Even though I'm an auctioneer, I should not react out loud when I get something at a bargain price, but I did. And when my partner in the antique shop and I buy something together, we have to sell it because we both would like to have it for our collections. So I sold it. And I sold it to a lady who paid us a nice profit. And recently she was downsizing and she put it in another auction and I bought it by myself. My partner was not involved, and so now I own this piece that I always wanted. That's how obsessive collectors are. An interesting category that relates to Charlottesville, to Monticello, to Thomas Jefferson, and the University of Virginia are these walking sticks. These were all hand-carved by a gentleman by the name of Thomas Jefferson Craddock. And I assume because his first two names were Thomas Jefferson, he was obsessed with Thomas Jefferson on the way. He hand-carved each one of these walking sticks, and he put all sorts of information and little vignettes and all sorts of stuff. Each one is an individual work of art, an individual work of folk art. For example, this particular carving on this cane starts out Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, born April 13th, 1743, was President U.S. 1801 to 1809, wrote the Declaration of Independence, founded University of Virginia, 1819, died July 4th, 1827. This cane was cut near Jefferson's tomb. All of that is on this particular walking stick. This particular cane was made for a Mason. It has the Masonic emblem on it. It has the person's name, W.B. Bruffy. And on this cane, he has panels that talk about Thomas Jefferson and the University of Virginia. This cane happened to be made just after the Rotunda burn. And so he put on here Rotunda, UVA, burnt Sunday, October 27, 1895. Then he talks about Jefferson's tomb from 1826. Then he talks about Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, born April 2nd, 1743, was President U.S. 1801 to 1809. Then he talks about the fact that he wrote the Declaration of Independence, founder of the University of Virginia, 1819, died July 4th, 1826. Once again, he says this cane was cut near Jefferson's tomb, Monticello, VA. But he also adds Jefferson's dying words: resign my spirit to God, my daughter to my country. End of the cane, end of the story. This is one of my paintings that's quirky, and it's also UVA related. The artist is Parks Duffy, who currently lives in Kilmarnock, Virginia. He has a vivid imagination. This is Mad Bowl at UVA. The fraternity houses are all around. Everyone is out there not social distancing because this is pre-COVID. And you'll notice in the distance, there's the Statue of Liberty in the upper right. There is the Capitol in DC and the Jefferson Monument. Everything is in close proximity. It's a fun painting. These paintings are by Charles Smith, who founded the art department at the University of Virginia. He was there in the 40s and 50s. He did woodblock prints and woodblock paintings. Very contemporary style. Some of his are extremely abstract, others have birds and animals. He is now very collectible in the art world. This painting is by Lincoln Perry, who did the mural at Old Capitol Hall at the university. I bought this directly from the artist, from his studio, which at the time was at McIntyre Plaza in Charlottesville. This painting was done in 1990. Now we'll move to the 21st century, and I'll show you the work of an artist I discovered about 4 years ago. Devon Rodriguez is his name. He lives in the South Bronx, and he's become an overnight sensation because he paints scenes on the subway. When a collector runs out of room, he has to start collecting smalls. For example, you open the drawers of this case and you see a collection of portrait miniatures. All of these are hand-painted. Most of them date to the 19th century. One drawer, two drawers, three drawers. I won't bore you with any more. This is my collection of North Carolina face jugs. And my favorite jug is this large jug that has a figure with dollar signs in his eyes. And on the back it says auctioneer. Wonder why I like that one. All the face jugs are on top of a small blanket chest that is tramp art. And someone made it as a Christmas gift for either his wife or a girlfriend. It's for Polly, which you'll see down in the center, and it was made in 1926. Just an amateur craftsman. This is my study, and I had the bookshelves installed after I bought the house, but I preferred putting decoys and doorstops on my bookshelves. Well, there are a few books, however. The decoys are mainly from the eastern shore of Virginia and Maryland. The doorstops are from all over. And doorstops can be a little tricky when you're buying them. So one thing you want to look out for is when there are screws, you want to make sure it's a flathead screw and not a Phillips head screw. If you see a Phillips head screw on a doorstop, get far, far away from that doorstop and don't buy it because it's a reproduction. This wall in my study has a little bit of everything from all sorts of periods of time. One thing I'd like to focus in on right now is a tiny little painting on porcelain. And this is a mother checking her son's head for lice. How could I resist that? You'll also notice we have James Monroe up here. And as governor of Virginia, he signed this particular land grant. And over on the side wall, the upper portrait is a self-portrait by Middleton Freeman, who was a very infamous, and I use that word intentionally, infamous artist who lived on Ellingwood Avenue and asked people who might be contemporaneous with him about his stories.
Since moving to Petersburg, I've become heavily involved in historic preservation. Right now, we are at Battersea. This is a house that was built in 1768 by Lieutenant Colonel John Bannister. And he was John Bannister IV. He served during the Revolutionary War. He was a friend of George Washington, a friend of Thomas Jefferson. This house he built when he was 30 years old. It's in the Palladian style, and the Battersea Foundation now is restoring it to its original condition. Welcome to Battersea. One of the most outstanding elements in Battersea is this period Chinese Chippendale stairway. This was built at the same time as the house. It's considered the finest Chinese Chippendale stairway in Virginia and one of the finest in the United States. We had one of the leading faux painters in Virginia come and paint all of the doors at Battersea in keeping with the way they were faux painted in the 18th century. This particular room is called the East Hyphen, and the faux painting in this room matches the faux painting that was originally done at Battersea in the 18th century. There's a lot more work to be done at Battersea. This is what most of the rooms looked like before we started work. You will see the house deteriorated over time, but the house is worth restoring to its original condition. That is the project of the Battersea Foundation, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. Thank you for coming to Petersburg, to my home, and to Battersea. I look forward to meeting with Robin Stafford, answering any questions that you may have concerning my home and historic Battersea. Thanks again for coming.
Hi, Pat.
Hello.
That was something.
I enjoyed doing a virtual tour much more than, having people coming through my house.
Exactly. It was great. Well, we will move to the Q&A section of the program. We had a number of questions come in with the registrations, and we'll start with those. But if there are additional questions, please feel free to enter them below on your screen in the Q&A, and we'll get to as many as possible. But Pat, you did mention to me in the green room that you have made a discovery since we filmed.
We have breaking news, a breaking news update. UVA did not provide me with an official banner, so I made that one myself. When Robin came to Petersburg, it was before Christmas, and I was bragging about a lot of stuff that I own, and then along came a Christmas present to me. And I opened up this Christmas present, and it happens to be a book with a very succinct and to the point title.
Lift it up a little bit, Pat. I don't think
All
that.
right.
There we go.
Yes,
Little-
you have it. Yes. It's hard to lift up CRAP, but anyway, there it is. When I received this book, I thought, I know the types of things that are going to be included. They're going to be Beanie Babies, things like that. Well, yes, there are about 4 pages about Beanie Babies in this book. But I also thought, no way is this book going to have anything that I own that's in my collection. Wrong. As a matter of fact, one of the items that I was bragging about as we were walking around doing the video tour is not only in this book, there's a full page, full color picture of the item. Well, I'm going to read you the description first and then show you the picture. Plate 8 in the book CRAP. Old things could also be crappy, like this early 19th century Staffordshire figurine of Benjamin Franklin, identified as George Washington. Here he is. Can you see?
Oh my gosh.
See him? Well, usually I am happy that something I own is included in a book, but not in that book. I still love it. It just goes to show that one person's trash is another person's treasure. And so it's still my treasure, and it's in a book, and it enables us to laugh at ourselves as collectors. Not to be too serious, to enjoy what we're doing and go from there.
I mean, that is a perfect segue into the question of, do we collect because we love the object or because we think it has some inherent value and may even appreciate over time?
I think we all hope that the item is going to appreciate over time, but I don't think that's the main reason to collect, to buy antiques or to buy art. I think you should buy it because it speaks to you, because it's something that you really, really like and want to live with. For investment, you buy gold, bullion when it's low price, silver bars when it's low price, platinum, you put it in the safe deposit box, you never look at it, you pull it out, sell it when it goes high. Buy items that you are proud to display and that you can grow old with.
So among the questions that came in was one asking how you started collecting and when you started collecting. I know you shared the Buddha with us, but it sounds as if you were already going to estate sales.
Well, yeah, I guess I started off collecting coins, and from there I started collecting pin-back buttons like political buttons. Then I started collecting advertising. Then I started collecting postcards, local postcards of Charlottesville, the University of Virginia, and it just kept mushrooming. And so I'm not a serious collector in any one category. I like a lot of different things. And honestly, I think that's the best approach for a collector. Get different antiques that you like, different art that you like, and enjoy them.
And so has your taste changed over time?
Well, back in 1975, when I had my first apartment on my own, I had a couple of rooms that had some antiques. My main living space was all contemporary. And the contemporary art, some of it was by an artist who taught art at the University of Virginia. Gene Markowski was his name. And he did sort of optical art, geometric art, very, very colorful pieces. So I still appreciate that sort of art. It's sort of mid-century art, but I have gravitated to more figural paintings, landscape paintings, and more in the antique category over the years.
Let's see, a couple of questions about specific items. For instance, the tramp art chest that you mentioned, the Merry Christmas poly
Yes.
that we saw in the video. How do you date tramp art?
Well, this particular one really helps us with the date because in 1926. And so this particular person was so proud of it, and he was proud of the fact it was going to Poly. He was proud of the fact he was giving it as a Christmas gift, that he carved in Merry Christmas 1926 Poly with hearts. Tramp art is going to date usually from the late 19th into the early 20th century. And tramp art usually is not as large as a blanket chest. Usually they're picture frames and smaller pieces. And I think I was very lucky to get this piece.
That's terrific. Also, we had several questions about brown furniture, and you have some beautiful pieces of brown furniture in your house, but in general, that market is fairly depressed. What's your feeling about when it might come back, or if it will?
I honestly believe that better brown furniture is still doing well in the marketplace. It is brown furniture that dates from the Victorian period into the early 20th century that is just not holding up in the marketplace. Those pieces that I showed you probably would not bring as much today as they would have brought 20, 25 years ago, but they have not plummeted. They have not gone way, way down in value. The millennials out there do not have the same taste as the baby boomers. So you always have millennials who were born between 1946 and 1964 compared to millennials who were born between 1977 and 1995. And it's like, what's going to happen down the road? When the millennials get tired of having their gizmos and their box store furniture, hopefully they will start wanting to collect some of the better things that the baby boomers have acquired over the years.
And that we've had a couple of questions just about insuring items. So for instance, those pieces, your Jamestown exposition piece and the wine cellarette, if you were to insure items like that, are you insuring them at the current market value or what you paid for them or what you believe them to be worth? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, the owner of items, of antiques, fine art, cannot really write an appraisal on his own possessions. So it's going to take a certified appraiser to come in to examine the merchandise, to look at the condition, and to look up comparables in the marketplace. Insurance value is about the highest value that you can place on an item because, God forbid, your house burned down in a fire, you would want to be able to replace those items. So an insurance appraisal is, again, is going to be a little bit higher than a fair market value. A fair market value is what's going to happen at an auction sale. A fair market value is what a person is willing to pay another person for an item in the open marketplace. So you need to hire a certified appraiser to come in and want an appraisal for insurance purposes.
Okay. Back to your trajectory. You mentioned again in the video that you were part of the just your career working with that distributorship, Bruton's, in Charlottesville. And then I know you were dealing on the side, but then when did you decide to get your auctioneer's license and move into that realm?
Well, it was midlife crisis, I guess, because I was about 42 years old when I went to auction school. And I had been going to auctions for years and years and years. The first auction sale I ever went to was with my grandfather. He took me to the livestock auction at Albemarle Livestock Yards, which is over in the Belmont section of Charlottesville. And I did not understand a word the auctioneer was saying. And if I were to go back today, I still wouldn't understand a word the auctioneer is saying. Because livestock auctioneering is a whole different language. So my desire to get into the auction business was sort of accidental. Working for the wholesale distributorship, we accumulated a lot of premiums, boom boxes, and all sorts of different things. And we would have a special event once a year for our customers. So I made this decision that I wanted to have an auction sale for our customers. I made it possible for them to accumulate paper money that they could spend at the auction and add these paper money pieces, which they got when they bought certain deals from me, add paper money to real money, and they could come to this auction sale. So I asked a lady auctioneer that I knew to teach me how to be an auctioneer. So she gave me a videotape from an auction school down in North Carolina. It was the Mendenhall Auction School. And so here I am looking at this videotape, trying to become an auctioneer, listening to this. Then I go out and I buy a cowboy hat, I buy cowboy boots, I buy a bolo, and I appear at my event, which I'm sponsoring, up on stage, auctioning off boom boxes and TVs and all that kind of stuff. I was having a blast. And someone after the auction said, "Where do you have your auctions?" I said, "I don't have auctions, just this one auction." I'm not an auctioneer, but you can auction stuff, even if you are an auctioneer. So, but that was September of 1990. In January of 1991, I went off to the Missouri Auction School in Kansas City. And it's Missouri Auction School is called the Harvard of auction schools. I thought, well, I always wanted to go to Harvard. Never tried to apply, wouldn't have gotten in anyway. But I can go to the Harvard of auction schools. I went out to Missouri Auction School, spent 2 weeks, left there with a diploma saying I was a colonel, because auctioneers in the past have been called colonels. Came back to Charlottesville and started doing monthly auctions on a Wednesday night. Still working at my regular job. Decided these auctions are a lot more fun than my 8 to 5 job. And so I then became a full-time auctioneer in 1996.
Now back to just a couple of pieces in the video. People are wondering about the subway artist from the Bronx, about Devin Rodriguez, how you discovered him, and how, well, just, yeah, tell it.
Devon Rodriguez is an amazing story. His story. It's a New York story. It's a Horatio Alger story. I was flipping through a magazine, and the magazine is called The Artist Magazine. And this was an issue about 5 years ago. And they had an article entitled 3 Artists Under the Age of 30 to Watch. Devon Rodriguez was included in this article, and he was only 19 years old at the time. And it showed a couple of paintings, a couple of his subway paintings, one of which I just showed you. I'm buying that. So there was a way to connect with him, communicate with him by email. I sent him an email message, started corresponding with him. I've since bought about 20 of his paintings. A number of them I've commissioned. 2 of the paintings that you saw in my living room were actually featured on kiosks in New York City, November a year ago. And when they were featured on these kiosks, people who were the subjects of the painting, who never knew they had been painted, found out that Devon Rodriguez had painted them. And so it was a discovery. And the way Devon Rodriguez does the painting, goes on the subway, he'll take a photograph on the subway using his cell phone, go back to his grandmother's apartment in the South Bronx and do a painting. And currently he is doing small sketches on the subway of all these people obviously wearing their face mask, and he's been marketing those. He has actually been a finalist in a special competition sponsored by the National Portrait Gallery. And I'm pleased to say that I've met him on 3 different occasions, once at the National Gallery and twice in New York City. He is someone to watch. He is now just 24 years old, and he's already quite famous in the New York art world.
So it sounds as if initially, when you read that article, it was more of a, maybe I should invest in this young artist.
And once again, his art spoke to me, and his art continues to speak to me. And I wasn't buying it because I thought, 10 years from now, he's going to be worth a lot of money. But I think 10 years from now, he is going to be worth a lot of money. So I think that was the right investment.
People are also asking about paintings that they have and how to best get them appraised. I know you've mentioned going to an appraiser for insurance purposes,
Right.
But how about just in general, if you're curious?
Just in general, there's some on the internet that you have to subscribe to, but they're worth the few dollars a month that it costs. One is called Ask Art, Skart. And Ask Art represents the auction prices realized at different auction sales across the world of fine art. And so this is going to be anything from oil paintings to watercolors to gouaches to bronzes, all original art. And if there's a certain artist you're interested in, you can put them on your watch list and you can see as they come up for auction. But you also will see auction results over the past 20 or more years for each of these particular artists. So that is a way to go and find out what an artist has sold for at auction. And the auction price is the best price to look at because the auction world is the secondary market. It's what at least two people competing with each other are willing to pay for the item. A gallery price is what a gallery owner puts on the particular piece of art, and then he hopes one person comes along to buy it. So the gallery price is the primary source. The auction is the secondary source, and Ask Art just has secondary sources for fine art. Another website is called WorthPoint, and WorthPoint has all sorts of different antique items, and it also has prints and multiples and auction prices realized in that particular website. So if you go to these two websites, you can learn an awful lot.
So somebody is wondering about where is the best place to sell? It sounds as if they have some Tiffany silver. And so would you recommend selling through auction or listing on eBay? Those were the choices they.
Right. I always prefer a live auction to eBay. I've never listed anything myself on eBay. I have given some items to someone to sell on eBay, but just a few items. But to me, you search the auction houses in your area, you look at their reputations, you go to Yelp, you go to a source called liveauctioneers.com, where a lot of auctions feature their items. And also there's a lot of feedback there. You find out what auction houses have done the best job for these categories. And I would go with an auction house that now is probably selling just online. Once we're past this pandemic, hopefully most of these auction houses will also have in-person auctions as well as online bidding.
People are also wondering about the history of your house that you're in currently.
Right. My house looks a lot older than it is. It was built in 1953. It was built by a gentleman by the name of Henry W. Macklin. And we know that for a fact because he was so proud of building this house that he scratched his name into the beams in the attic. Henry W. Macklin built this house in 1953. He didn't put it in just one place, he put it in several places. Well, Henry W. Macklin was the president of the John Macklin Tobacco Company. Peanut Company. The Macklins also had tobacco, but he was the president of the Peanut Company. And family homes were down in Georgia, in Albany, Georgia, as well as here in Petersburg. He copied a family home in Georgia that was a much older home. He had an architect come in and basically copy a family home that's in the Georgian style and moved into it here in Petersburg in 1953.
Okay, and now let's move to just talking briefly, and then I have a few more questions about your auction house. But if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about Battersea and how you came to be involved in that project, because you told us when you left Charlottesville that you would not be doing anything, but.
I said that. I was invited to be on the board at Battersea, and I'm very, very pleased to be able to contribute a little bit to Battersea. Battersea is a house well worth restoring. The Battersea Foundation purchased the house from the city of Petersburg, so the foundation owns the house, It's now on about 37 acres. We've actually added some land, which is down by the Appomattox River. And that is where two different mills were located, a sawmill and a flour mill owned by the Bannister family. And Battersea will have, when the pandemic is over, some live events. Back in 2019, we had quite a few live events here, and in 2020, we had to cancel all of our live events. But this year, we will be having the Virginia Opera coming to Battersea. We will have an antique and trades fair at Battersea. We will have an oyster roast at Battersea. We will have various events such as that. Also, it is a wedding venue, so a number of people do get married here. And right now, we're in 2020, we raised money by having an online auction and also by having a raffle. So it's just nice to be able to be involved in the restoration of an absolutely gorgeous house with a wonderful history. And at some point in time, it will be nice to be able to figure out if Thomas Jefferson had anything to do with the design of Battersea. We can't prove it yet. Maybe there's some hidden document somewhere that will say, because Lieutenant Colonel and Thomas Jefferson were friends and they did correspond. And I do want to correct one thing I said at Battersea. I said John Bannister was 30 years old when he built it. He was thinking about building it when he was 30. He built it when he was 34 years old. Mea culpa. I get to use my mouth.
Were any of the original furnishings in Battersea when the renovations started? And then will it be furnished when the renovations are complete?
No original furnishings, because it was used as a residence over the years up until 1970s or so. And so any furniture that was at Battersea wound up being dispersed here, there, and everywhere. Currently, we are accepting donations. We're sort of vetting donations that might come in to help furnish the rooms at Battersea once we've finished actually restoring each individual room. So our plan is to furnish Battersea with furniture from the time period.
Great. So, so back to your auctioneering life. So you started out with your Wednesday night sales, and then when did you decide to start your own auction house?
Well, I had the opportunity to bring to auction a tall case clock that was made in Pulaski County, Virginia. And this tall case clock was a very unusual piece. It was a piece of folk art. The story is the inlay in that tall case clock was made up of 365 different types of wood. Now, I think that's an exaggeration, but that's the story. And then they tossed in ivory for leap year or something. Anyway, the person who made it was made down in Pulaski County, Virginia. And this was this particular maker's premier piece. It was made for a certain family. It descended in the family. I actually found out about it through the son whose father owned the clock. The clock resided on Blue Ridge Road in Charlottesville. Sam Miller's father was Professor James S. Miller, professor of electrical engineering, and this clock descended in his family. And so Professor Miller passed away, then Mrs. Miller passed away, and then two brothers inherited the clock. And
we just lost that part, Pat, because of your sound. We're just
all right.
Yeah.
Professor Miller passed away first, and then Mrs. Miller passed away. Then two brothers, Sam and his brother Jim, inherited this clock. So what do two brothers do with a clock? You can't cut it in two. So you got either one has to buy out the other, or you have to sell it. They decided to bring it to market. It was sold at an auction. This was when I was solo. It was Vernon-Powell Junior Auction Service. Lee Keno from New York came down to view the auction, this particular clock. Prior to the auction, he sent his right-hand assistant, a lady who came in carrying an infant in her arms, and she let me know that she was going to be in the back of the auction bidding on this clock. And the way she was going to be bidding, since people knew who she was going to be cradling this infant in both arms when she was bidding. And whenever she would stop bidding, she would put one arm down to her side and cradle the infant in one arm. Well, she never put one arm down to the side. So Lee Keno from New York wound up buying the clock, and it wound up going to Colonial Williamsburg, where it wound up on the cover of a book and is one of their premier items in their collection. I'm not sure that answered the question, but hey, it was fun telling the story. I've lost you.
Sorry, I muted because a dog came into the room. Sorry, real life intervenes. So just wondering, a question came in from somebody who may actually be an auctioneer asking, do you have a favorite piece that you sold during your career? And was it that, or was there something later on?
Well, that piece brought a lot of money. It brought $209,000, which is a lot of money.
I'm sorry, say the number again, because it leaves.
$209,000.
Okay.
It brought $209,000. But my favorite story is going into a little brick rancher just outside of Charlottesville. The lady had to go into a nursing facility, and so her daughters and son decided they needed to sell things to raise money. I walked in to their living room, and they had jammed all sorts of stuff in the living room, on tables, and on the floor, and everywhere. I went in, I scanned the room, and I walked over to the hearth. I picked up jardiniere on the hearth with cracks and chips, a jardiniere with cracks and chips. And I turned to the sister who was in charge, and I said, if this did not have all these cracks and chips, it would definitely be the most valuable piece you have in the agency. And her brother said, I was going to throw that away. It's all cracked and chipped. Thank goodness he didn't. We advertised it. This was before people were bidding on the internet. We advertised it. We had 3 telephones on it. We had some people who drove in to bid on it. We wound up selling it for a little over $8,000. And after we sold it, the sister came up to me. She literally ran up to me. She hugged me. She praised the Lord. It's the first time anybody's ever praised the Lord over something I've sold. And I just happened, I'm glad you asked that question, because this is a similar item, only this one is not all cracked and chipped.
Could you raise it a little bit higher? Okay, I see.
All right, this is called Newcomb College pottery. And the way you identify it is, I don't know if you can see where my finger is, there is a C with an N inside the C. That is the sign for Newcomb College. And Newcomb College was down in Louisiana. It was a school for young ladies, and they made a lot of different artistic type items, including pottery. So that is your good CN on a piece. Let me tell you about bad CN on a piece. That would be a doorstop. And that would be a CN on a doorstop, which means in nationalist China. So CN on pottery is good, but a CN on a doorstop is not.
So full disclosure, I did work at Pat's Auction House in Charlottesville for
She was a good employee too.
for seven plus years. I picked up some collecting habits while I worked there that I still have not been able to shake. But I'm wondering now, and people have asked this, can you reveal some of your secrets now? Obviously, we miss your auction house very much in Charlottesville. There are a number of people who worked with you as well on this program, and also customers who registered. But where do you now find the items that you're buying?
Well, it just so happens that coming up this Saturday, there is a small auction house in Madison, Virginia, and they're going to be selling a Thomas Jefferson Craddock walking stick, which seldom comes up at auction. They're also going to be selling a watercolor by Charles Smith.
Oh.
And they are featured on live auctioneers. You can Google Madison Auction House, Madison, Virginia, and discover where it's going to be sold. But anyway, I get some good buys there.
Okay, so you do still, so you buy
I still buy, sure.
Sure. Not to be macabre or to talk about your demise, but we've had 5+ questions.
Sure.
5+ questions about what will happen to all of your collections eventually, many 50, 70 years from now.
They'll be sold at auction.
Okay.
Quite frankly, a few pieces will go to individuals, but 99.99% of the stuff will be sold at auction, because I enjoyed buying stuff at auction. My parents enjoyed buying stuff at auction. So let it fly when the time comes.
We actually had somebody write in who, with several partners, is starting a small auction house and is just asking for any advice you might have.
Well, see a psychiatrist first. Just kidding. My advice is have some money behind you, be prepared, have a cushion for the bad times, because there are going to be some bad times. Make sure that you know what you're getting into. Have someone who is able to catalog items, identify items, describe them. Have someone who is good on the internet. Most importantly, treat your buyers and your sellers the way you would want to be treated. Make sure that your reputation doesn't suffer, because the one thing that will put an auction house under quickly is a bad reputation. When people just don't trust the auction house, they don't trust what they're doing. You need to establish a reputation. You need to live up to the ethical standards that auctioneers are asked to have, and keep up the good work by doing what's right.
That's very good advice. And I think you had such a just crystal reputation in Charlottesville.
Thank you.
So much integrity. No, it was terrific. So I haven't asked you about the picture hanging behind you, which looks like a rotunda image.
It's a rotunda in the snow, and I think you've got one to come up here so people can see.
Oh,
there it is.
Thank
there
you,
it is.
Ashley. Great.
Thank you. It's not a very artistic photograph, but it's the history of this photography studio that I want to share with you. So obviously it's the rotunda in the snow. Someone did not do a very good job shoveling out the sidewalk leading up to Madison Hall. They didn't do a very good job shoveling the steps up to the rotunda, because I just see, footprints and things through the snow going up there. But this particular photograph is by Charlottesville.
Oh, Pat, the name bleeped out.
All right. It's by Holtzinger Studios in Charlottesville. And
Okay.
maybe we have a little arrow that might show up here. There it is. It's embossed on the photograph. And Holtzinger, the man who started Holtzinger Studios was Rufus Holtzinger. He came from Pennsylvania. He came down to Charlottesville in the 1880s. He started doing photography at the university around the city of Charlottesville, and is actually the most famous of the Charlottesville photographers in the early part of the 20th century. He passed away in 1930, and his son, Ralph Holtzinger, took over the business and continued with it until the 1960s. So I don't know what this particular one dates to, this particular photograph. I'm guessing it's probably from the 1930s or so. But when you're looking at photographs of Charlottesville, look down in that right-hand corner and see if by any chance Holtzinger did the photograph, because those are very collectible.
Great. We're almost out of time, Pat. One question, couple just talked about kind of collecting trends in the future. Have you seen anything you think is going to come to the forefront? Things that are popular at auction now you're surprised by, or?
You're always surprised by what brings money at auction. You never can quite predict. And so I don't advise an auctioneer to promise a certain amount of money for an item, because when two people want something, they'll pay all sorts of money for an item. And when two people don't want something and nobody wants it, even though you might think it's valuable, it won't bring much of anything. In terms of art, as you can tell with Devon Rodriguez, he is Latino. His family is originally from Puerto Rico. I'm finding in the art world that Latino, Latin American artists are really coming of age. I like several other Latino artists. There's one in Mexico who recently passed away, Abelardo Favela.
Please say that again more slowly,
Yes.
so we can write it down and run out and buy one.
It's Abelardo Favela. Abelardo, Abelardofavelo. His paintings are almost caricature. They're not impressionistic. They're not realist. They're sort of caricatures, but they're fun. I really like his art. And there are a number of other Latino artists who are coming into their own. In terms of smaller collectibles, again, brown furniture, unless it's really, really cream of the crop, is not bringing that much at auction right now. So if you just want to furnish a house and get decent furniture that won't fall apart, go out and buy some brown furniture. Collecting trends, always things like sterling silver objects, handmade objects. I think art glass, blown art glass, to me, it came down a little bit in value, but it's going back up in value, much more so than mass-produced glass. So things that are handmade, I think, are always going to have a market, especially if there are quality items that are handmade.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Pat, for sharing all of your knowledge and history. So much fun to see your house. And we, cut a lot of footage out. There are many other rooms and items and drawers full of goodies in Pat's house that we did not include. I remember his house in Charlottesville, actually the kitchen cabinets had no food. They were filled with collected too. So this house, I actually looked in your cupboards when I was there, and there's a little bit of food now and plate. But anyway, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And best of luck with Battersea.
Thank you.
And just thanks for being with us. And I'd like to thank everybody behind the scenes in my office who helped pull this whole thing together. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.